Hello, this is Dave Krackhardt, and I'm talking to you from my studio in my basement in my house. And I wish I could be there in St. Petersburg, but that was not to be this year. Anyway, I'm here to share with you some insights that we have found over the years in understanding the micro context around network ties and the importance of that understanding for our being able to make sense out of the network data that we have. And I am quite pleased to be able to be here with you. Let me go right to my screen so that I can share. Yes, there we have. Okay, so what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the what we've done so far in understanding the importance of Simmelian ties. We have lots of research that's been done over the years, some of which I'll talk about that has been published, some of which has not yet reached that stage. But first of all, let me just say that what Simmel did in his original argument back over 100 years ago is say that the sociologists' focus on dyadic relations is probably not where the action is. He says the fundamental unit of analysis really should be a triad, and he had lots of arguments for that. Basically, what he said was that we have dyads that stand in isolation, and we have equivalent relationships that are embedded in triples, like on the right here. And when that happens, in fact, what we see is a fundamental shift in not simply the strength of this relationship, but in the content and how that relationship is actually, how it actually operates. So that in his view, there is a qualitative difference between a sole dyadic relationship and one that's embedded in a group, in a triple. This qualitative change is a function of the fact that we are operating now inside a group, and the group has norms, and those norms make a difference in how that and what's available to the actors in those relationships and the relationship itself. I want to give you an initial example of one that was one of my first encounters with the power of this particular way of thinking about networks. Some years ago, I ran a prisoner's dilemma exercise in my class, and because I was in a public policy school, I still am, and not in a business school, which I also occasionally teach in. Because of that, though, these students tend to be pretty cooperative. So what we found is the cooperation rate over a 9 iteration prisoner's dilemma exercise was 75%, which is pretty high. The prisoner's dilemma exercise was randomly assigned between pairs of people in the class. There are 25 pairs, and they stayed in the same pair as they as they went through the 9 iteration exercise. I had also collected data on the people in this class as part of the class itself, on their networks. And so I had information on who was friends of who. And one of the things I found was that of these 25 pairs, 15 of them were friends and 10 of them were not friends. So a lot of friends in this class. 15 of those pairs were friends, 10 were not. And as you might expect, the cooperation rate of the friends was considerably higher than the cooperation rate of non-friends. But while that was true, it's not that the differences were huge, but they were clearly noticeable differences. Now, that's not a surprise, but then I thought, well, if Zimmel is right, that really there's something to be said for paying attention to whether a dyad is embedded inside a triple or not. I thought, well, let's take a look at these 15 friends and find out how many of them are actually have a third friend that enables them to be embedded in a clique inside the classroom. And it turns out that of the 15 friends, 4 of them were embedded in a clique, and 4 of them were not embedded in a clique, and 11 were embedded in a clique. So 11 I will call Simmelian friends because they were embedded in one of those cliques where they were mutually tied to a third party within the class context. And so, well, let's take a look and see, did those 11 Simmelian friends cooperate any more than the the 4 non-Simmelian friends, people who were friends but non-Simmelian friends? And lo and behold, yes, they did. 89% of the Simmelian friends cooperated, and only 67% of the non-friends. Now, that is slightly higher. That is, the Simmelian friends were slightly higher than the just normal friends, but that's because a lot of them were Simmelian friends. What was particularly interesting to me was that of the people who are friends but not embedded in a triple, their cooperation rate was not much different than the cooperation rate among those who are not even friends at all. That is, this 67% is not that much different than the 63%. And what I took away from that is, it's not the friendship that's inducing this cooperative behavior. What it is being embedded in a triple. Now, that was my very first inkling that there may be something to this, that in fact, what we think of as attributing to dyadic features like, hey, this person is a friend of mine, I'm going to cooperate with them. Rather than thinking about that, maybe it's, hey, this person and I, we're in a group together. There are norms about cooperation. I better cooperate with them in order to keep up with those norms. That's a very, very different way of thinking about the phenomena. Okay.